oh, you're going to be just like me, but way better because I did everything wrong, even though maybe that person wants to be like you. And maybe be a little bit more open to the way you did things, even if it makes you cringe, even if you look back on your old art and you're kind of like, ugh, gross. Maybe other people kind of need to do their own version of that. Hi, I am Demon Dev. And lately, something that's been on my mind is something that I call expert syndrome. That may be a different term, or maybe there's a better term for this, but it's basically the grab bag, everything that happens when you gain lots of experience or ability or skill in a particular field. And I call it a syndrome because although there's a lot of obvious benefits to gaining experience and wisdom, there's a bunch of, I feel like, under appreciated pitfalls when it comes to people who have become true masters of their craft. So, for example, I'm going to stay specifically within game dev, especially indie game dev, as my kind of favorite topic, anyways. But one thing that I see happen a lot that I've commented on the past is sort of I don't know, pass it forward despair or jadedness about scope or, success. Certainly there's lots of videos and articles casting disappointment on the lack of success from a project or the mistakes made during the advertising process. There's a lot out there, but on a specific personal relationship level, when your friend or maybe you're the expert, there's a lot of interesting, I don't know if I would call it temptations or just maybe inclinations, where the expert will say, okay, you gotta hunker down and start practicing. Like, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm still not good. So if you want to even have a chance of making anything quality, you better, do 5 practices drawing the human form every day if you want to get good at drawing, or you have to do a 30-minute sculpt of only the head or of only muscles or something like that every day for like a couple months or something like that. You need to do these challenges to push your skill building faster and faster. And the thing that I'm saying this obviously with the implication that I'm going to criticize this behavior. The interesting thing is, okay, obviously disciplined practice yields results. There's no question about that. The weird thing, though, is that a lot of the times experts in the field didn't start that way at all. There's certainly some who, one day decided they were going to get into 3D sculpting or drawing or illustration and concept art or game development, and they just started a very disciplined practice, and that's fantastic. But most people that I know, myself included, started just kind of doing whatever they wanted to do. Maybe they were drawing terrible anime characters or trying to make a dragon as their first 3D model and struggling or flailing generally. But just doing something that interested them for whatever reason, and looking back on it, and I think a lot of people feel this, like in hindsight and retrospect, that wasn't a very efficient way to learn anything. I should have been doing this every day. If I had done this every day, just imagine where I would be, the potential that I could have had. And you may be thinking, okay, yeah, that's all true. Yeah, there was a lot of wasted potential. Like, if I could convert 1,000 hours, I know 10,000 hours is the limit, but getting started, like the first 1,000 hours, to be more disciplined, if I was using more references, if I was doing more of a practice, then I would be a lot better. And that's right, but that takes one assumption kind of out of or makes one assumption that we shouldn't skip over. And that is personal energy and motivation. A lot of times it's kind of overwhelming what is required to get good, to be creating art, anything creative, games, programming, at a high enough level of quality. And the truth of the matter is that it's going to take a long time. But the secondary truth is that maybe we don't construct our entire entrance into the field based on a accurate, some more objective view of the timeline. You know, maybe I say maybe, most people do not actually sit down and think, okay, um, here are the skills that I need to have my dream job or dream career or make my dream art in 10 years. Working backwards from that, I need to do a 30-minute sculpt every day. I need to do anatomy practice for another 30 minutes every day. And I need to, I don't know, make social media posts of my art once a week or something. And that all seems reasonable. And I think most of us have done that. But in practice, it tends to be harder to keep up because the problem with disciplined practice is, well, it takes a lot of discipline, but it's usually disconnected from core motivations. So core motivations is like, you know, I want to create a character that I really care about. And the assembly line aspect of disciplined practice, where you're like, well, I'm just going to make a character today, no matter how I feel about it. It's completely disregarding or insensitive to your emotional state, is can be really taxing. It can be really crushing and can lead to paralysis and kind of giving up on the practice and driving people into jadedness. So there's that whole complex field of daily practices do work, but they work in spite of the emotional fluctuation of the day to day. And I think maybe there is a really good time for that after you get into the field for a long time. Certainly, the farther you get into a field, the more you can respect the discipline that it takes to move up the next step. You know, maybe drawing once a month will move you forward at the early stages quite dramatically. But as you get better and better, and the differences to improve become smaller and more nuanced, it's possible that you really only will progress with steady practice. That's not really the core focus of what I'm talking about. But all I'm saying is, yes, there's a lot of value to daily practice, but perhaps the most valuable aspect of that is later on. And specifically talking about expert syndrome is how it relates to I don't know, noobs, or I don't even know if there's noob syndrome, might just be blind optimism. I'm not sure. But anyways, there's a real jadedness with expert syndrome, which is, it's kind of self-critical because it's looking at your own history and being like, wow, here's what I should have done and didn't do at all. And from certain metrics, that might be right. You know, you learned in a really inoptimized way. Maybe you built some really bad habits. Maybe it wasn't good. But the first point that should always be recognized, and I think often isn't, is that you did it at all. And that's what expert syndrome comes down to, I think, at the very end of the day, is you are an expert now, and you should have some humility about how you got here. You may fantasize about how you could have gotten where you are faster or at a higher level than actually happened. But whatever you actually did to get to where you are worked. And that's really the only thing you know as an expert, is that a very specific chain of events happened and now you're here. What you don't know is whether you could re-simulate your life with like a personal trainer, but for your art or creativity. What you don't know is if, you know, wiser, older version time traveling and telling you what you're going to do, what art you're going to make today, and what art you're not going to make. You don't know that that would have worked. You don't know that you would have been able to get past the early stages where most of the stuff you're making was going to be not so great. Maybe a large part of what gets experts across that kind of first hump when they're noobs or starting out is not an optimized, you know, training schedule, but just, you know, just trying to feel out what they like or don't like about things. And it's, you know, not very I don't know, complex yeah, and it's not very complicated. It's just, oh, I just kind of made a thing today. And I think we need to be a little bit more respectful of that process and less eager to turn new people in the field, whether it's game development or art creation, really anything creative. I think we need to resist the temptation to be like, "Oh, you're gonna be just like me, but way better because I did everything wrong," even though maybe that person wants to be like you. Maybe be a little bit more open to the way you did things, even if it makes you cringe, even if you look back on your old art and you're kind of like, "Ugh, gross." Maybe other people kinda need to do their own version of that. Yeah. So that's all kind of like the core, principles of it. I think the way that it comes out right is, in the recommending daily practice over just, just make something you want. Just what was something that you watch that you love, or do you have some of your own lore or ideas that you want to build on? Go and do that. Um, I do heavily recommend using references. That's a good way to get good, and you can draw out specific elements or ideas from references and make it your own. But the most important variable is motivation and energy, is why you're doing it, and respecting that process first. Discipline, I think, comes later, if it's supposed to come. But I see this a lot also with rec leagues, in sports, especially for children, where adults get really excited about the maximum potential. Like, okay, what if we drill on these exercises? And it's not just sports, but band or anything. Um, what if we drill on these exercises every day for hours? Whoa, imagine the potential. And I think that's a little bit corrupt. I mean, certainly you get results, but it can be very alienating. Like, a lot of times, the leadership for these organizations are not super in tune with the kids. There's a very heavy cost to getting out of the system, and not a lot of flexibility to integrate each person's personal motivation or growth strategy. And it's a very corporate way of saying, what are the skills that people want to grow in, mindlessly, maybe not mindlessly. There's design there. But drilling in a group setting is going to lack that personal element that values at least what the people think should be valued most on a case by case basis. So it's just something to think about. Expert syndrome strikes us all. We all went through usually a kind of a crazy path to get wherever we ended up. If we have, significant skills in anything, and we should be very aware of the fact that all these crazy things happen. And then a lot of times what we suggest to new people is the opposite of what we did to get started. We don't tell them to work on the random thing that they're interested in. We work on them to practice their fundamentals. And for some people that works. But for the people that works for, they probably don't need that advice. They're probably already doing it and seeing a lot of success. Anyone who starts out with a lot of motivation to do disciplined practice and sticks with it probably will see success. But the expert syndrome that I'm worried about is when you tell people confidently how they should go about things, which don't match your own personal experience. It's just the way that you would do it now. But the way you would do it now, you're crazy. You're an expert. You developed all these skills over a long period of time, and now you have different core values and desires. I see it happen with programmers all the time, myself definitely included, where you start to be really interested in ways that the code works, or performance optimizations, or different ways of structuring things that does not matter at the beginning and can be very paralyzing and damaging to getting a project moving quickly. Um, but that's what you care about when you become an expert programmer, and especially in game development, is those sorts of things. So it pains you to see people doing things the wrong way and you want to correct them, and you can, but think about, eh, you in their place without the skills. Does a correction that you don't really understand, can't relate to, and feel it makes you alienated a little bit from your work, which does happen a lot. You might think that that's not fair, it's just helpful criticism, but we should take into account that that at the early stages, our values were different, and we kind of got a little bit weird on the way to becoming experts. We care about strange things a lot of the time. Color theory is important. I don't understand it, but it may be the wrong approach to push somebody into that research field and that practice too soon, because it doesn't connect with a lot of people. Some people just kind of want to start sketching shit. And, maybe they have no right to be peacefully sketching away their intro to art sketches. But just remember, think to your personal experience. Were you doing color theory your first 100,000 sketches? Maybe you should have been, maybe you shouldn't have been, but you got here as a chain reaction generally of not having done that. So a little humility and giving advice that you yourself did not follow. Anyways, have a good one, and I'll talk to you again soon.